Hello, everybody. I just finished reading this book, The Psychology of Dementia Praecox, by Carl Jung. It's a very interesting book, um, and I'm going to kind of like give you my take on the book as I finished it. Um, why am I doing this? Well, why this book? It just happened to be the very last book I just read. I just finished reading just 3, 4 days ago. And it just occurred to me that I should start doing these things. I like to read books and I like to speak about them, kind of synthesize my ideas. Okay, so let's speak about the book. Um, so this is a very old book, probably from the beginnings of the 1900s. I don't remember the exact date, but this is one of the very few books and writings by Carl Jung where he speaks about schizophrenia, psychosis, or what was referred to in the past as dementia praecox, meaning you become absolutely crazy. When you when we refer to a person as being crazy, this is what this means. It means you lose yourself completely into a world of fantasy. You no longer belong to reality, and you have all kinds of awkward symptoms and behaviors. It's the people that you will commonly see in asylums and hospitals, people that just basically went mad beyond repair sometimes. Um, so um, in the book, he basically gives us an example of a case that he's treating of a woman that hallucinated and couldn't communicate in other way other than clang words and all of that. So the first part of the book is pretty monotonous, and you kind of see how it is that the science is made, basically, in the sense that um, all the hallucinations and um, and craziness had a root cause, and that root cause Jung proved to be what he would call the complex, the emotional complex. In this specific client, there were three complexes that he identified. One of them was the complex of megalomania, meaning she thought she was the best person ever, um, and which she had to use to compensate for the other complex, which was the complex of um, tragedy, or the complex of injustice that she felt that she suffered, not only because she was in a mental asylum, but because she suffered previously in life. Grew up in a poor family, and he doesn't explain exactly what challenges this woman faced, but nevertheless, that complex was present. And lastly, he shows that there is another complex, which is the sexual complex. Um, okay, so the complexes, which can be multiple and they can take many forms. Some complexes may be stronger than others, which, if I'm going to simplify them, I will say that a complex is basically emotions. Emotions that are attached perhaps to a certain event or a certain object outside or inside within ourselves. But nevertheless, whose root cause is something that happened because it actually existed, whether that's an event or an object, like I mentioned earlier, external object. Um, and he doesn't go into detail into the person's life and story because that's irrelevant as far as science goes, and also because to protect the person's name and privacy, which is totally understandable. So towards two-thirds of the book are basically that. It's that analysis, and then the last one-third of the book becomes more interesting because now he starts to um, to think in to try to formulate a theory. What is the cause of schizophrenia? Um, he will say, and I will strongly agree with him, that the cause of schizophrenia are not the complexes, are not these these psychological foundations, because we all have them. Neurotics have them. Um, Hysterics have them. Just regular people like you and me, we have those complexes, or those the same unconscious, or we share similarities in our unconscious. Artists and poets and all people of all sorts have those complexes, and they are shown in symptoms of a neurotic or an obsessional compulsion way, or in hysterias, or what I already mentioned, right? You can express that in your writings, in your paintings, in your art, um, or attach your emotions towards some objects outside, whether that's family, whether you sublimate them in a way that's akin to civilization. Um, so we all have them. But what's the difference between those and schizophrenia? We cannot say that schizophrenia, the root of schizophrenia, what caused it is those complexes or those emotions, those heightened psychological states. We cannot say that because those also are shown in insane and sane people are alike. They belong to all of us. The difference in schizophrenia, he would say, is what he called a diminishing of consciousness, meaning there is a certain stupefying factor where you lose contact with yourself. What you lose, that makes you lose contact with your ego complex, the ego who you think you are, that's also complex and is the most dominant complex in most people, and remains dominant in every other case. Neurotics, poets, normal people, what we could call normal. I don't think that anybody is normal. Nobody is normal. Everybody is very unique in their own ways, in the ways that they organize internally their emotions and their psychological factors. Nevertheless, um, everybody that's not gone utterly insane has preserved the ego complex as the main complex, the one that directs life and orients your life, versus a schizophrenic, a catatonic, or a paranoid that psychotic paranoid will completely lose that. So it's not the ego that's directing their lives; it's the complex that's playing a fantasy in life that is completely incomprehensible to normal people, and that's why we consider them crazy. Um, so he will say, well, this is the root cause, or this sounds more, but what causes the diminishing of consciousness? What causes when you don't own yourself, or at least a part of yourself, which is your ego anymore? What causes that? He says that I don't know how much psychology to this day has advanced, but he says that by his time he doesn't know exactly what causes it. We can make um, um, comparisons with other states that are similar to that. You can lower your consciousness by intoxicating yourself, by being extremely tired, by um, um, if you're a neurotic or any of that, there are times where you feel exhausted and tired because all of your energy goes into the neurosis, goes into your symptoms, but nevertheless you still keep your ego, right? And then he says, well, there is actually a time in our life where something like a schizophrenia happens, and that is the dream. Dreams are more closely related to schizophrenia than any other symptom. Why? Because while we're dreaming, we're actually not sleeping. Obviously, there is some rest, some sleep, but when we're dreaming, we're some part of us remains conscious as well. We're dreaming, otherwise we wouldn't have dreams. Something in us has to be able to perceive and be aware of that happening. Um, and dreams are completely incomprehensible, do not make sense most of the times, um, and uh, and that's why he compares schizophrenia as a dream. So they two are very similar. The difference is that dreams happen while you are kind of at sleep, but schizophrenia just continues with you your whole life, or for a big chunk of your life. So as what causes that diminishing of consciousness, he doesn't know. He will hypothesize that it might be an organic, physic cause, whether that's a toxin in your body or that your body produces that makes your nervous system and your brain not work. Can be something in your brain, can be something that he wouldn't know. It can have both psychological and physical causes, which kind of makes sense to me. He speaks of cases of clients or patients that the cause was something completely physical. Maybe they received a head trauma or something like that, or a brain tumor or something like that, and that causes it. Sometimes it's an emotional shock, which is a psychological cause, something traumatic that basically breaks the person. Um, but he will say that uh, neuroses and everything else that keeps you somewhat sane, not lose yourself, that's what I mean by that. They are usually complexes that belong to your personal life, things that happen within your past, in your family, in your career, in your love, relationships. Um, but schizophrenia, on the other side, is overwhelmingly more has to do more with what he calls the collective unconscious. He says the primitives in the past, they didn't think like we think now. Oh, people just diminish consciousness. The primitives all actually thought that it was the unconscious became very strong, that your consciousness could. So it's not a consciousness weakness, it's an unconscious strength that causes it. And for an unconscious to be this strong, it has to belong most likely to something in the collective unconscious, something that's archaic, instinctual, that got touched somehow, and that belongs more to the realm of mythology. Um, and you know, and that's what happens a lot of times with schizophrenics. They imagine angels and demons and whatnot, that haunts them or have weird sensations in their bodies or whatnot. Um, that's what he says, right? So he will differentiate between everything else and schizophrenia as completely belonging mostly to the collective unconscious that has overflown your life and has taken possession of you. You no longer belong to yourself, and you basically act out those forces in life. And you know, and because they are fragmentary, they are not fully reality. They have to remain um, in the realm of mythology mostly, and then we have to decipher them from what the patient behaves or can talk or whatnot, which is very, very difficult. And because it's a complex, it's emotional and all of that, it's going to be very hard to find what the emotion really is, because usually they will disconnect completely from the emotion and just ramble and talk about things and that don't make sense. Um, and whenever you know that you touch the emotion, whenever the patient resists or thinks too much before answering or things like that, because that means that they are trying to protect themselves in that way, which makes it even harder. Um, and most neurotics and hysterics and everybody else that's somewhat sane, the psychological problems that they have where they still remain themselves without losing themselves, like the psychotics, they do that because mostly the psychological cause is something that belongs to the personal unconscious, something that's more surface level, and because of that, it's not very strong and doesn't overwhelm you, doesn't overtake you, like in psychosis, which belongs to the collective unconscious, like I said. Anyways, I think that's the end of the book. In short, I just saved you. It took me. I think that I could have read it because I took a long breaks in between to finish it. Because, like I said, 2/3 is just one study of one patient that kind of bored me, to be honest. But then when like the last few, I finished the last 1/3 of the book really quickly because it was very interesting. Everything synthesized and summarized. So I would say I just saved you, I don't know, this could be read in probably 2 weeks, maybe 1 week, in just, I don't know how long this video, 10, 20 minutes, whatever it is. So there you go. I'm going to keep posting more content about this, interesting stuff, at least to me. All right, thank you and bye.